Now I'd like to introduce our two speakers, Dr. Tony Kurlavage and Dr. Jamie Guidry-Avo. Dr. Kurlavage is the director of NCI's Center for Biomedical Informatics and Information Technology, where he oversees CBIT's mission to accelerate cancer research by empowering scientists and clinicians with the data and tools they need to drive their research. Dr. Kurlavage will share an overview of the proposed initiative and its focus on data and data sharing. Dr. Guidry-Avo is the director of NCI's Office of Data Sharing. Dr. Guidry-Avo will serves as part of the Childhood Cancer Data Initiative leadership team and will discuss the goals of the upcoming Scientific Planning Symposium and how you can get involved. Please welcome Dr. Kurlavage as we start the webinar.
Thanks very much, Nina, and good afternoon, everyone. So in the State of the Union address on February 5th of this year, the President proposed a $500 million investment over 10 years. The recommended amount for fiscal year 2020 is $50 million. If funded, this would support the Childhood Cancer Data Initiative, or CCDI, which focuses on the critical need to collect, federate, analyze, and share data to address the burden of cancer in children, adolescents, and young adults. This data initiative will connect existing data and make it more widely available to researchers and oncology teams in order to accelerate research progress into the understanding of the biology of cancers that occur in children, as well as identify new targets and approaches for intervention. The four main goals of the initiative are, first, maximize every opportunity to improve treatments and outcomes for children with cancer through understanding what critical questions can be addressed with access to well-curated data. Second, identify opportunities to make data work better for patients, clinicians, and researchers through establishing meaningful data sets. Third, build a connected data infrastructure to enable sharing of childhood cancer data from multiple sources and make it easier to access. And fourth, develop and enhance tools and methods to extract knowledge from data that's been aggregated to enable discovery. We know that the overall outlook for children with cancer has improved greatly over the last half-century. Although survival rates for most children's cancers have increased in recent decades, the progress has been especially dramatic for a handful of cancer types. By contrast, survival rates remain low among certain cancers, particularly by age or location. For example, only 10% of children diagnosed with diffuse intrinsic pontine glioma survive 2 years from diagnosis. As already stated, the ultimate goal of the CCDI is to maximize every opportunity to improve treatments and outcomes for all children with cancer. So why the focus on data? New opportunities are made possible by the basic science and clinical research being conducted across the globe, and they produce an unprecedented amount of data. Driving scientific questions define the data that need to be generated. Ensuring that these data can be accessed effectively, used by the broadest number of researchers, will ultimately lead to new diagnostic tools and treatments. To be most successful in this endeavor, we must define and implement an infrastructure to allow researchers to find and access data on rare pediatric cancers from multiple sources, and further provide ways to analyze it in the aggregate. We need to link data from multiple efforts, including basic research, clinical trials, population studies, as well as real-world patient data to enable new discoveries. In addition, connecting different kinds of data, such as genomic, clinical, radiology, or histology, helps researchers find meaningful relationships between biological characteristics, like certain genetic mutations, and clinical features, such as treatment response. For example, the data can be used to identify children whose tumors have a certain pattern of genetic mutations that would respond well to more targeted treatments that either improve outcome and/or reduce the toxicity of the current standard therapies. The underlying causes of many childhood, adolescent, and young adult cancers are unknown. Unlike in some adult cancers, most childhood tumors have relatively few genetic mutations. Sharing data broadly allows researchers to identify key characteristics of cancer biology, such as how cancer begins to grow. For example, several studies published in 2018 examined pooled genetic data from adults and children with the same types of cancer and found major biological differences between the tumors that form in children and in adults. This type of study could lead to cancer treatments that are tailor-made for children. In addition, children, adolescents, and young adults who survive cancer often experience long-term side effects later in life from their cancer treatment. There are opportunities to make therapies less toxic and to find ways to help monitor or prevent late effects in current survivors. We need the ability to track pediatric cancer survivors beyond their initial treatment and gather outcomes data over time through their journey. If we're successful, this effort will become a virtuous cycle in which scientific questions lead the generation of new data, and the growing knowledge bases will lead to new scientific research. Providing access to more comprehensive and more complete data will help drive discovery and create new opportunities to develop more effective and safer treatments, as well as ways to promote healthy survivorship for childhood cancer patients. Finally, data sharing also helps clinicians make better treatment decisions for children with cancer. For example, an oncologist may be treating a child with an ultra-rare cancer for which there's no standard of care. The oncologist might use genetic data from the child's tumor to identify a potentially effective treatment. If they have access to data from other doctors who have tried that same treatment for patients with the same cancer, the oncologist and patient may have more confidence to try it, and the oncologist may be better able to determine what dose to give and what side effects to expect. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Jamie to add her thoughts and also to describe the upcoming symposium.
Thank you, Tony. So in this context, childhood cancers are considered rare collectively, with approximately 15,000 new cases diagnosed each year in the United States. And even with the exemplary participation rates in research and trials that we see in the pediatric and AYA populations, the overall numbers of patient samples and then thereby the amount of data generated from those specimens and then further available to researchers is often quite limited, particularly for certain cancer subtypes. Additionally, data from samples collected at individual institutions may be limited by the lack of diversity, both in the characteristic of the patient themselves as well as the treatments that they've received. So all of this presents challenges for research in the analyses and accurate interpretation of that information. Further complicating the low number of research samples, existing data sets are not available to the research community altogether, and they are often incomplete for certain types of analyses. For instance, certain data sets may lack imaging data but have other types of information available. So as Tony mentioned, data sharing through a well-curated, federated infrastructure or ecosystem, if you will, is critical to alleviating some of these issues, particularly in childhood cancers. It allows researchers within the U.S. and even around the world to readily access larger cohorts of childhood and AYA cancer data and specimens from multiple sources, which increases power for meaningful and complex analyses on a larger scale that can include factors affecting diagnosis, treatment, and outcomes over a long period of time. Data sharing initiatives encourage collaborative research between scientists and clinicians of different disciplines and with complementary expertise, which can provide greater opportunities for novel discovery and improved therapies that are needed in childhood cancer. So having access to more complete data sets will also increase our understanding of disease biology and help drive the development of more effective and safer treatments, as well as ways to promote healthy survivorship. With all of this as a backdrop, NCI is bringing together scientific stakeholders and leaders from multiple areas, including academia, government, industry, and advocacy organizations, bringing them here to Washington, D.C. In a little over a week on July 29th, that will run through the 31st. In what was mentioned is being titled the NCI's Childhood Cancer Data Initiative, or CCDI Symposium. This meeting is intended to be a scientific planning session where we can gain a common understanding of the current issues and opportunities in childhood cancer research that can be addressed through enhanced data collection and, as mentioned, maximum utilization of that data. Discussions during the symposium will refine existing goals as well as help inform their implementation for this proposed CCDI initiative, as well as NCI's approaches to childhood cancer research and data sharing more broadly. The intent of this scientific symposium is to bring together people who have data, people who know data, and the people who use data to inform NCI as we plan to move forward with both systems and processes for maximizing the utility of that data, particularly from pediatric cancers. So the symposium layout is somewhat as follows. The opening sessions on Monday evening, which will be July 29th, will include a charge to scientific leaders who are in attendance and or listening in on videocast, because there are multiple ways to attend, for envisioning the priorities of this proposed data initiative. And that will include high-level overview presentations and panel discussions on data sharing, management, and utility in that pediatric cancer research space. And that will be occurring between 5 p.m. and 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. The second full day, which will be Tuesday, July 30th, will include more panel presentations. They will be a little bit more directed into 4 focus areas of the initiative and really set the stage for researchers on the priorities for the data and science, as well as a panel will be focused on governance that will need to be considered while seeking to develop a pediatric data ecosystem. In the afternoon, the sessions will be consumed by concentrated breakouts in each of those focus areas where experts in various associated fields will take a deeper dive into some of the specific issues. For reference, those focus areas include, number 1, prioritizing scientific and clinical data needs for therapeutic progress. The second breakout will be, and this also coincides with the morning panel, the second breakout will be creating meaningful data sets for clinical care associated with research progress. The third breakout will be the infrastructure to enable federation among pediatric data repositories. And the fourth will be development of tools and methods to extract knowledge from data. On the final day, which is a partial day on Wednesday, July the 31st, the day will start with summary reports from each of these breakout sessions, followed by brief presentations of both initial reactions and final thoughts from our NCI leadership team, including Drs. Doug Lowy, Dina Singer, and Jim Dorshow. The meeting sessions, except for the Tuesday breakouts, will be available to the public through videocast, and we would encourage people to register for those. The immediate next steps for the initiative are as follows. First and foremost, we do have up on our cancer.gov site a Cancer Research Ideas website. And this is a place where people can come and give their input. You want to move on to the next slide? Okay. Sorry. The idea scale is up through August 9th. It will be gathering ideas from interested stakeholders and the public. Collaboration and input are key for us here at NCI, and the CCDI would like to hear from each of you, from patients, parents, researchers, clinicians, advocates, data scientists, engineers, anyone with a bold idea that can contribute in this space. We would welcome your input. In support of the CCDI, NCI has launched Cancer Research Ideas as an online platform where the public can submit ideas on how to advance progress against childhood cancer through enhancing data sharing. We received several scientific questions in preparation for this webinar. We hope to discuss those and other questions at the upcoming scientific symposium, but we also encourage you to add your questions to that Cancer Research Ideas website so that they can be considered. The ideas will help the NCI to develop recommendations on how to make the most of the federal investment to collect, analyze, and share data to address the burden of cancer in children, adolescents, and young adults. The stakeholders meeting, as I mentioned, is on the 29th through the 31st and open to the public through videocast. So if you have not registered, please go to the registration site and sign up. I believe it's possible to do that up and through the day of, but it's very helpful to know in advance who all will be listening and how we can help to facilitate that type of traffic and AV needs. So please do go sign up and let others know to do the same as well. I also wanted to mention that poster abstracts from the meeting will be available on cancer.gov by the start of the symposium on July 29th. So one thing that is happening that I did not mention on the very first night is there will be a poster session that just logistically cannot be open to the public for video cast, but the abstracts will be available, and we would encourage everyone to go and to look at those and to see about some of the science that is going on in the pediatric cancer research field. Following the meeting, NCI will publish a summary based on the symposium's key areas of focus, and we will also be holding a post-symposium webinar to update the community, and we are aiming for having all of this by the fall. In the meanwhile, we would invite you to follow the hashtag data for childhood cancer, which you can see up on the screen, as well as sign up for our email list to stay up to date with this initiative. And with that, I think we're ready to take some questions.
Thank you, Dr. Kurlavage and Dr. Guidry-Avo. If you have any questions, please type them into the chat box now so that we may address them. And we'll just start with a question that we received through registration that we'll start with. Okay, so I'll read the question. How can we, who have relationships to the many stakeholders in the peds oncology space, support your efforts? Joining a committee or meeting, connecting with the community, et cetera.
Thank you, Nina. I think I'll take that one on. So we are going to want to engage with the community around this initiative, and I did just lay out some ways that we can do that. But in the meanwhile, education around the importance of data sharing for progressing disease, understanding, and care is critical, and making our advocacy community an essential partner with us. And we understand that trust is built over time, and stakeholders listen and learn from those who they trust. So we at NCI are committing to create more educational resources around data sharing, and our groups working together to ensure that all stakeholders will have an accurate understanding of the policies and the processes will go a long way in helping to support us in our progress.
Great, thank you, Jamie. We have another question. How could researchers learn from the NIH about the high priorities of research so that our research could be used for evidence-based policy decision-making in the future? Do you want to take that, Tony?
Sure, I'd be happy to take that. So at a very high level, the NIH seeks to set policy from a lot of different sources of input, including stakeholder feedback. It's done for RFIs, or requests for information, where the public's encouraged to provide input that helps shape policy language. And as investigators, we all strive for our policies to be evidence-based and capable of evolving along with the science. In addition to that, both the NCI and the NIH directors lay out their priorities for their councils, for Congress, and for the public every year. And we would encourage all researchers to look to their respective funding agencies for guidance as to the individual priorities of each. That being said, NCI's acting director, Dr. Doug Lowy, has already stated that childhood cancer is among his top priorities. And we're holding this symposium as a first step to getting the community's input for this proposed initiative and other activities in this area.
Okay, we have one more question coming through. Are the ideas that need to be submitted for this initiative need to be centered around the 4 key focus areas mentioned earlier, i.e. infrastructure, scientific, and clinical research needs? Jamie, do you want to take that?
I'll go ahead and do it.
Thanks, Tony.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we're structuring the symposium around these 4 main topic areas, and they're all pretty broad. So the first area is really about broad research questions. So really, it's as I've said in my introductory remarks, the science is going to drive the data that are generated and the data that we emphasize that we want to federate. So I think there's a broad scope for input in that space. There's also room for lots of input in terms of how to implement the infrastructure, what are the most important data sets, what are some of the tools for extracting knowledge from the data. So there's quite a breadth of different opportunities to provide input across those areas.
Great, thank you, Tony. We have another question. The question is this a U.S.-only initiative or connected with international groups to form larger data sets?
So this is, I think, as was obvious as it was stated in the State of the Union, this is a U.S.-funded and led initiative, but clearly we recognize the need to collaborate internationally and hopefully federate data globally in this space. So it would certainly be our goal to work in an international space, even being U.S.-led.
Great, thank you, Jamie. One more question. How will the Childhood Cancer Data Initiative interact with existing data initiatives?
So I think our goal is to help figure that out. We're having this symposium to bring together as many minds as we can and to try to come up with suggestions and approaches that are forward-thinking in our thoughts. And we really want as much involvement, not only for existing initiatives, but plans for developing initiatives that can help us to better work with data and use it to improve progress in therapies going forward.
And just to add to what Jamie said, we recognize that there are many very important research programs going on all across the U.S. and across the world. And again, in both of our introductory remarks, we pointed out the necessity of integrating as much of that data as possible, making it available to the broadest possible research communities. So our hope is that all of these, certainly all of these large efforts as well as individual PI efforts will participate in this initiative. We want to get everybody on board, everybody working towards this common goal of helping to find better diagnostics and treatments for children, adolescents, and young adults.
Okay, so I don't think we've received any other questions at this time. If we don't have any more questions, I think.
I would add, I think that we've been getting questions online and offline that are very specific for the science, which again, we think are wonderful feedback to receive. I would just encourage, if you have a very specific question or idea, again, please check out the idea scale and add it to that website, that online reference, and we will get to see those ideas and we will be able to iterate on those.
So at this time, we're going to go ahead and end the call. We encourage you to visit the Cancer Research Ideas website that's listed to continue sharing your ideas regarding the initiative and to register to attend the symposium virtually. We hope you'll all be able to join us. We will send out an email shortly with the links to both of these resources as well as our Childhood Cancer Data Initiative webpage. Thank you all so much for joining us today.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.